So let's try the next one. The next one, we're still going to kind of take baby steps, but we're going to do the sine function on this one. So let's see. First thing you want to do is go through all these questions so you can get a game plan together of how you're going to graph it. So my vertical shift is up or down, and this graph is going to go down 1. Horizontal shift is left to right. I'm actually going to go to the left 3 because it says +3 in parentheses, and it does the opposite of what you think. So left 3, my amplitude is a sneaky 1. My period is going to be 2 pi over the number in front of x, and we have a sneaky 1 in front of x, so it's just 2 pi. And we can go ahead and put our domain, negative infinity to positive infinity, for all real numbers. So my amplitude didn't change, my period didn't change, but I am going to move it down 1 and left 3. Okay, so first thing I want to do is take my normal amplitude that it's normally at -1 and +1, and I'm going to move it down 1. So my maximum is actually going to go down to 0, and my minimum is going to go down to -2. It moved down 1. So go ahead and draw those dotted lines. I've also found, like, if you want to draw a dotted line in the middle, that's been helpful to me too. Like I said, just one less thing to think about. I'm just going to hit these dotted lines. So you can do that if you want to put a line in the middle. Alright, so my starting point for a sine function is normally in the middle at 0, right? And then it goes up and comes back down. So this one, it's not flipped, right? We don't have a negative, so we're still going to start in the middle and go up. But we aren't going to start at 0. We're going to go to the left 3. Okay, so we're still going to be in the middle, just to the left 3. So go back 3, 1, 2, 3, which is where that -pi is. So we're going to start at the middle, and then we're going to go up, and this is our starting point. We're going to go up and come back down. Like I said on the last one, especially when we start stretching it, it might be helpful to go ahead and get the beginning of your cycle and the end of your cycle plotted, and then you can work from there. So my period is 2 pi. So in the distance of 2 pi, I'm going to be back at the same point. Right, so at -pi, I'm going to be in the middle, and at +pi, I'm going to be in the middle again. Halfway in between those 2 points, I'm going to be in the middle again, because sine goes up, comes back down, and then goes back up, right? Okay, so we're going to take these first 2 points, and in between these 2 points, I'm going to be at the top of my amplitude. I'm going to be at the maximum. In between the last 2 points, I'm going to be at the minimum. So we have our full cycle. Okay, and you just repeat it. So at 3 pi over 2, I'm going to be back up at the top, and at 2 pi, I'm going to be in the middle. -3 pi over 2, I'll be at my minimum, and at 2 pi, I'm going to be back at the middle. So it should look like this. Your range, your minimum is -2, and your max is 0. So your range would be from -2 to 0. We always go from least to greatest, or the lowest point to the highest point. Alright, so now that we kind of get how to shift, we're going to start playing with the amplitude and the period. So let's look at number 3. On number 3, we have a sine function. Let's go to answer our questions. See, we have a vertical shift. It goes down half a point, so it goes down 1/2. Horizontal shift, left and right. it's going to go to the right, pi over 2. My amplitude is going to be 2, a positive 2. Your amplitude will always be positive. My period is going to be 2 pi over the number in front of x, which here we don't have a number, so it's just 2 pi. Your domain is all real numbers. Alright, so this time our amplitude stretched our graph. We have an amplitude of 2. So normally, if we have an amplitude of 2, it goes up to positive 2. Let me ungroup this. Okay, so it normally goes up to positive 2 and down to negative 2. Now I wouldn't draw these yet because we're also going to have to move our amplitude down a half. So what's normally at positive 2, we're going to move it down a half, and now our maximum is 1.5. Our minimum is going to be negative 2.5. You just move it down half. So our range would be from negative 2.5 or negative 5 over 2. All the way up to positive 1.5, or you could put 3 over 2, either way. Now, like I said, it might help to go ahead and put your middle line. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can figure out what the middle would be and draw your dotted line there. Another easy way to do this, your amplitude tells you the distance from either the top or the bottom, whichever you pick, to the middle, or we call it the axis of our trig function. So the distance is 2. We could go down 2 and find out what the axis would be. So it should be 2 from the top and 2 from the bottom. So you could do it either way. But yeah, it might help to go ahead and draw that middle line. Okay, so we know up and down what we're going to do now. Now we need to figure out left and right. So for a sine function, normally we start out in the middle, right? And this one's the same. We're going to start out in the middle, but we're going to move it to the right, pi over 2. So instead of starting at 0, we're starting at pi over 2. And I put an asterisk. That way I remember this is my starting point. All right, and our period is 2 pi, so in the distance of 2 pi, we're going to be back at the same point. Okay, so you could go to the right. You would just end up here, almost the last tick mark, because it takes 3 tick marks to get to pi over 2, right? So 1, 2, 3. If I want to go pi over 2 past this 2 pi, it'd be 1, 2, 3. You could count backwards 2 pi. So it would be at negative 3 pi over 2 would be that distance of 2 pi. All right, so this is going to be one full cycle. Halfway in between these 2 points, I'm going to be back at the middle because sine normally goes up, comes down through the middle, goes down, and then back up, right? So halfway in between these 2 points, I'm going to be back in the middle. So you can draw those two. Now, make sure, and you could even like make a big note here. Since you have a negative at the very beginning, you're going to flip your sine function. So it might help to write flip really big so you don't forget and make a mistake. Like I said, there's just a lot to put all into one graph. So you need to make sure you cover every single part of this graph. right, so normally you start in the middle and you go up. If you're gonna flip it, you're gonna start in the middle and go down to the bottom. So halfway in between these 2 points, I'm gonna be at my minimum. Halfway in between the last 2 points, I'm gonna be at my maximum. So now we have a full cycle. And you're just gonna repeat that going backwards. So at 0, we'll be up at 1.5, then we'll come down. At negative pi, we'll be down at negative 2.5, come back up, and at 2 pi, we'll be at the maximum. So your graph should look like this. All right, so let's try another one. The next one, let's see, we have a vertical shift. It's going to go down 1. It's going to go to the right 3. My amplitude is 2 and it's positive, so it's going to be a normal start at the top, go down. My period is 2 pi because I don't have a number in front of x. Okay, and my domain is all real numbers. All right, so let's go ahead and fix our amplitude. Since our amplitude is 2, what would happen is it would normally go up to 2 and down to negative 2, right? But we're also going to move it down 1. So we take our amplitude, move it down 1, and now our max is at 1, and our minimum is actually going to be at negative 3 now. So our range is going to be from negative 3 all the way up to 1. Okay, if you want to go ahead and draw your middle, you can. Our amplitude is 2, so if we want to find out what the middle is, it's a distance of 2 from either the top or the bottom. So let's say you pick the bottom and you go up 2, that's going to be your middle. Alright, so now let's start plotting points. Normally for cosine we start at the top, but for this one we are going to move to the right 3. Okay, so start at the top and then go to the right 3. And remember, we're going by halves, so it'd be every other one. 1, 2, 3. That's your point. My period is 2 pi. It's going to be hard to go 2 pi to the right because you're going to be way off the graph. So we can go 2 pi backwards and we'll end up at negative pi and we'll have the same point. So that's going to be our full cycle. Halfway in between these 2 points for cosine, we're going to end up at a minimum here. Halfway in between these 2 points, we'll be in the middle. Same for the last 2 points, we'll be in the middle. So you have your full cycle. And then you just repeat it. At 3 pi over 2, you'll be back in the middle. 2 pi, you'll be at your minimum. So it should look like this. Try to get your curves to be like a little bit rounded, just a smooth curve. You don't want it to go straight to that point like a triangle, kind of. You want it to be a smooth curve. Alright, so this is the first set of notes. The second set of notes does the same thing, but I still want to go over them because we haven't talked about changing the period, how to stretch it horizontally, and that's what the second part's going to do.